Welcome back, you filthy exiles. And yeah, I am a little bit bored today. So anyway, this is what happens when I'm on holidays. It's not good. I'm stuck with my thoughts. Anyway, so I was thinking like, okay, so I didn't want to do a video talking about mechanics because like there's plenty of those, right? And whether you like melee or not, I'm a melee player with warrior. I think melee's not too bad. And a number of other things that just like we just gotta wait at this stage for the next big patch. And then I got thinking, what about the end game? What comes next in Path of Exile 2? And then I was like, well, I got time today. So on my trek down to the local shop, I was thinking and writing notes on my phone, as I usually do when I'm thinking about videos. And I went, what happens with the Pinnacle system in Path of Exile 2? Like, where does it go? What should we expect? Like, where's it at now? And anyway, so I fired up Photoshop and I've come up with some ideas. And for anyone at GGG who watches, feel free to steal away because I think this would be really cool. And so let's do a video on it and talk about it. And yeah, so let's get into it and see what my crazy mind has come up with. But yeah, let's unpack the future of Path of Exile 2 and my speculations around what could be next. And by the way, if you're not subbed to the channel, consider doing it. And if you want to become a member, by all means, it supports the channel and my very bad caffeine addiction. But anyway, let's get into the video. Okay, so as the salary man that I am, I did an org chart, and we're going to talk about this. But let's start with the very bottom of the chart, being level 3, and there are 3 levels to this organizational chart. These are the supervisors or the low tier managers. Think of it like that. But basically, these are the bosses that are both currently, or the pinnacles that are currently in the game, and that I expect will come into the game, right? So basically the first of all, talking about breach, so obviously we have Zesht, right? And we have 3 tiers to Zesht. Now it's a really interesting thing. I was watching DM's one of DM's videos earlier this morning, and yeah, he is right about, like, we talk about like Uber Zesht and whatever. I actually don't think these should have Ubers. Like, we just call them pinnacles, right? So tier 1 to 3 pinnacles. I don't think that these should have Uber versions. Like, the tier 3 is fine at this stage, maybe a tier 4, right? And the reason for that is because I think the bigger picture here with Path of Exile 2 is probably very similar to like Path of Exile 1, where like the Ubers should be like the absolute upper echelon of bosses, right? Like Uber Arbiter of Ash is ridiculous, right? And it should encompass like a number of new mechanics to the fights, and it should make you actually engage in the fight at that higher level as opposed to one tapping bosses. And I'm not going to talk about one tapping bosses. My stance on it is you shouldn't be able to one tap bosses, right? Not at least conventionally. I think like if you're running like low tier ones, things like that, they should be one tappable. But when you get to tier 3, that should take like, 45 seconds, and that's what Jonathan basically wants those bosses to be at, and I 100% agree with that, depending on the power of your gear. And as builds change, then specialization to characters that can take down bosses quicker should be a thing, and that's how it works in PoE 1. And I think that is a really good position for PoE 2 to consider specialization. I'll do a video on that if people want to see me talk about specialization with builds, because I think build specialization is what Path of Exile 2 is moving in the direction of now with all the changes in 0.3.1. But yeah, anyway, not going too far into that. Let's talk about this. So Breach, we have Zesht. We know we get T3, and all these bosses should have 3 tiers to each, right? I think the other 3 Breach Lords that will come in, and in Path of Exile 1, they're referred to as the Breach Lords. And I haven't looked at Zesht in enough details to determine whether he's called a Breach Lord or just like a boss. So obviously Zoth, and we have like gear in Path of Exile 2 in the lore and things like that about Zoth, but I don't think it should be Zoth, but something very similar, or that's something that sits above Zoth, like a fire-based version of that boss. And then Tool is Frost, I'm pretty sure. And Esh, I can't even remember what element Esh was, but Esh was another Breach Lord in Path of Exile 1. And basically there should be an iteration of those bosses, I feel like, and then you would have tier 1 to 3, and this would be different types of breach splinters that would drop. This is similar to PoE 1, right? This is like as breach is further fleshed out. My understanding from interviews from the GGG devs is that like this is the intention long term, but they just like they needed something to ship out the door. This is one of the interviews even earlier this year with Jonathan, and so Zesht was it, right? But I think some redesign for the other elements of it, and I think like 4 is good enough at this stage for breach, and then maybe adding in like an actual like breach, like I don't know, like mega boss at the end might be pretty cool. So you'd have these 4 that then roll up into something bigger. That's a bit of foreshadowing. Anyway, so then we've got Expedition, we've got Orloth, right? Orloth. It's Orloth, spelled Orloth. Anyway, so that's the pinnacle for Expedition, right? You have 3 tiers to that as well. So bam, right? Abyss, Vessel of Kulamak, arguably the weakest of all the pinnacles, right? But it is referred to in the wiki as a pinnacle. It's got good drops, very specific drops. You get the darkness and throne from it, things like that. Fine, that's Abyss, right? Ritual, King of the Mist, obviously. We have tier 1 to 3 King of the Mist. And then Delirium, we have Kosis and Omniphobia, obviously tier 1 to 3 versions of those as well. They're determined to be pinnacles based on how PoE 2 is set up, even though, I don't know, they're not conventional pinnacles, but they are pinnacles nonetheless. That's how they're referred to. Anyway, now we go to level 2, and this is when we start the real speculation. Okay, so the Arbiters, level 2 pinnacles, right? These are the big kahunas, okay? But not the biggest. We haven't gotten to that yet. So basically, we have Arbiter of Ash, right? We have Uber Arbiter of Ash, which is the hardest boss in the game right now. Most expensive to run and hardest in the game right now. But that got me thinking, what comes after Arbiter? Is Arbiter the top? Or is Arbiter something more? Now, looking at like the lore here a little bit, like, and I'm not a lore buff, right? But anyway, so basically, like when you're fighting Arbiter, there's this thing called the Flame Seed that comes up, or the Seed of Flame, whatever. Anyone who's run it 1,000 times, you know that that's a thing. Pretty much, that's an interesting concept, and for some reason, I built the path in my brain that it could be something like Avatar, like The Last Airbender, right? And so I came up with the concept of 4 different arbiters in the endgame, right? That you have to break down. And I'll talk about how I think the system should work to be able to access these and whatnot later in the video. So we'll pull up the actual map and we'll talk about the Citadel of Flame and all the rest of it. But, or the Citadel of Ash, whatever it's called. I should know the name of it now. I look at it every day. But anyway, so that got me thinking, okay, so maybe like there are 4 seeds, right, that build the, you know, the whole, okay. So 4 hemispheres of the Arbiters, or 4 quadrants of the Arbiters, or 4 elements of the Arbiters should exist in that basis. And so then I came up with the Arbiter of Frost, which could be really cool. And then you would have an Uber version of the Arbiter of Frost. Then, obviously, the Arbiter of Earth. You see where I'm going with this in my thinking. Which would all be about, like, stone and rock-based sort of stuff. Similar to, like, the boss at the end of, like, Act 4 now. When you go, before you go in to get the 4th Edict element, the spear, complete the spear. Basically like that boss, and it's all like stone-based attacks and all that sort of stuff, and you got to bash through the walls to get to him and all the rest of it. And then for the final Arbiter would be the Arbiter of Chaos, and that would be like, you know, the Big Mac daddy of Arbiters, right, as far as Chaos goes. And because Arbiter, so then you would have Flame, Frost, Earth, and Chaos, right? And you would be able to access these from 4 different citadels and 4 different locations, all using the same sort of keys to get into the citadels, but then you would then be able to collect a drop from each citadel, right? But where would that drop take you? And I went, well, okay, so what comes above all of these? And this is where we go to level 1, right? And we talk about the Big Mac Daddy of all the pinnacle bosses in the endgame. So I don't know where I got the idea from this, but I was just sort of walking and thinking about it. Then we get to like level 1 and we get the Omniscient Overseer. And I feel like that sort of fits even like I modeled this one in ChatGPT because I thought it'd be pretty cool, and it sort of came out with, you know, pretty much something very similar to like the Shaper in Path of Exile 1, and I went, damn, that's actually really cool. And so the Big Mac Daddy Lord that sits above all the Pinnacle bosses, the big Pinnacles in the endgame, it would be like the Omniscient Overseer. And my idea for this would be where you would have 4 citadels for each of the different elements, right? And this would be biome based, or something that would be, you know, in essence of biomes that would affect the way that the Atlas map works. And then I was thinking like, well, wouldn't it make sense where like if it's storyline based, right? So like they want that endgame map system to really stand out. So once you defeat all 4 of the citadels, right? Um, then basically the temple where you start is actually housing the Omniscient Overseer, and the whole time you don't know it, but you're standing on top of the biggest boss in the game, and that's where you access the that's where you need to go to access this boss, right? It basically changes your Atlas map, totally changes. It lifts the temple up in the center and reveals the bottom layer of the temple, which is the biggest layer, and that is where the Omniscient Overseer is based. Right in the center of your map, at the very start, is also where the very end commences as well. And I was like, that's actually a really cool concept. So you would, like, in short summary, you would defeat each of the arbiters. Each of the arbiters would drop you a key fragment, being like the flame seed, the ice seed, the dust seed, and the miasma seed. I was like, well, because arbiter chaos, miasma, right? Anyone who's watched anime would come up with that conclusion as well. And then to access the Omniscient Overseer, you would need all 4 seeds to then access the Omniscient Overseer, and that would totally change the map. Like, and that would then break, like, you know, the Atlas map, or like do some sort of reset mechanic or something like that, but also reveal access to the Omniscient Overseer, which would be the hardest boss in the game. Like, no one shots, you're not going to be able to one shot this boss ever. Like, even at the base level, it's going to be like an Uber Arbiter of Ash at the most base level, right? And then the Uber version of this is going to be like only the best 1% of players can defeat that Uber. It is the hardest in the game. Like, you basically need to be a god tier player to be able to do that. Anyway, that's my idea of like Path of Exile 2 and where it could go. And I don't know where I came up with this. I was just like thinking about it as I was walking. And then I was like, I'll punch this in ChatGPT, see what comes out of it. And sort of, I didn't really get the names of this from ChatGPT, just thought of it as I was walking. And then obviously, you know, imaging this and whatnot. So then basically, this is our total chart, right? So we zoom out. We have basically all of our small pinnacles that roll up into our tier 2 or level 2 pinnacles. These are our directors of the organization. And then the CEO at the very top is the Omniscient Overseer. This is the way that I'm looking at it, because my head's just stuck in this governance space right now around this sort of stuff. But anyway, I thought this would be a really fun video to do, to just speculate where GGG could go with this. And by all means, GGG, if you get ideas from this, go crazy. Like, I actually think this would be a fantastic way to span the end game out. And then basically, like, we find out by 1.0 that, like, we haven't, or these could be league mechanics after 1.0. So the Omniscient Overseer doesn't come in until like 1.5 or something like that, or like 2.0 or 1.10, whatever. They got 1,000 patches of Path of Exile. But anyway, I thought this would be a lot of fun, and I've had a lot of fun making this, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, because yeah, I wouldn't mind making more videos like this where we're just having a bit of fun speculating what could come of the game. Obviously, I'm very excited for Path of Exile 2, and yeah, if you want to link to this, I'll put it in the description below, so you can sort of send it around and be like, hey, this is really cool. But yeah, anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub, and I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one, all.